I don't know why I like it. I just always have.
This is a conscious effort on our part to open the creative envelope, so to speak, in order to entertain you in a more contemporary manner. Even though we call ourselves sports entertainment because of the athleticism involved, the key word in that phrase is entertainment.
Vince McMahon has lost his mind. The man doesn't have it anymore.
We in the WWF think that you, the audience, are quite frankly tired of having your intelligence insulted.
Have you watched the television show lately?
We also think that you're tired of the same old simplistic theory of good guys versus bad guys. Therefore, we've embarked upon a far more innovative and contemporary creative campaign that is far more invigorating and extemporaneous than ever before.
Because while Doink the Clown had a green hair and a rubber nose, Stone Cold Steve Austin was drinking his first beer in ECW, damn you. Oh, we got attitude. You got nothing, man.
As the times have changed, so have we.
Welcome back to Beyond the Beermat, the podcast that went to WrestleMania live in spirit. We sat there and we watched both nights on separate screens in separate homes with our mobile devices, but we came together with a spirit of community togetherness and sarcastic jokes spread throughout both nights. My name is Stuart Quigley. Alongside me is Bill. And I got to be honest with you, just before we get into the deep dives of what went on, general thoughts on the pay-per-view as a whole and the experience as a whole?
It was a unique experience, wasn't it? I thought I did a good job under the circumstances, to be honest. I think it was an easier format to watch. If you'd have tied both days together, it would have been a 6.5 hour show, which, you know, we've been complaining about it for 2 years now. So, yeah, I thought it was good overall.
And do you know what? It sounds really almost to the point where I'm being condescending, but I got to be honest with you, over the last couple of days, I actually felt a little bit of sort of rejuvenation and a little bit of my love for wrestling came back. Just touch. I'm allowed to be a cynical, smarky bastard, but just generally watching these shows, I felt like this is why I watch wrestling in general, to sort of not overanalyze, not go in too deep, not panic about the booking decisions. And as well, like, we'll get into these slightly more intensely as we talk through the podcast, but you've got two different kinds of matches other than the ones that are in the arena, specifically the Boneyard and the Firehouse Funhouse match. Do you think that those kinds of matches where it's filmed out of the ring are here to stay because of A, the reception to it, and B, let's be perfectly honest, this isn't something new. This is just something the WWE has attempted to do before, and given this situation, were forced into doing it bigger than they'd ever done before, putting their chips in the middle, if you were, and now I think they might actually do this again, even when the crowds come back.
I don't want to see another match in the ring, to be honest. I'd watch.
Yeah.
I'd gladly watch a 6 hour film. I wouldn't really, but no, it was a nice form. It was a nice change to. It was similar to the Final Deletion, and I think after the initial shock value, everyone seemed to like that. So yeah, I'd like to see him do more of that. Only on a rare occasion, because if it became a weekly thing, it gets boring as anything else, wouldn't it?
The other thing as well is you can't do it with mid-carders, because I don't see how you could insert that halfway through a show. It would throw the whole thing off. I feel like, I mean, I could be proven wrong, but I feel like if you're going to do it, it has to be at the very end.
Yeah, you couldn't put that halfway through the show and carry on.
Moving away from the big talking point matches to the most important matches that on paper didn't look that groundbreaking, but may prove a bigger point in the future, in that we got not one, but two world title changes.
I actually think both title changes were needed. I thought both matches were poor. There's a reason a finish is called a finisher, and it's not to hit 16 of them and kick out. The prop match was extremely similar to the Goldberg match the night before, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think there's 5 moves between two matches.
I don't want to say that. I fully accept the Goldberg match, because I know what you're getting with Goldberg, but Brock and McIntyre could have put a better match in that on.
Oh, okay, there's a few things there. To a lesser degree, you do get this with Lesnar a lot more than you think nowadays. I've got a wider point that I'm leading to in a second, but this idea of Lesnar and McIntyre, what they could have done. I think they're not handcuffed completely, but the idea of everything that they were planning probably did go out the window, and I suspect they went for that sort of, I don't know what you call it, simpler style.
Yeah.
Where you go in, get it done, and get out again. Whether that has any sort of, I mean, you could be really cynical and say that's kind of what Brock wanted to do and just get the hell out. But I don't really.
I'd say it was that. I didn't see a triple threat ladder match being rushed through like they didn't care.
But the wider point I want to say is, you said these are title changes that were needed.
Yeah.
Do you think now moving forward, empty arena, otherwise, that this is the end that we're seeing of these kind of matches? Because I do wonder whether you're looking at the angles they can go down in terms of going off the ring and in terms of the characters that they're moving away from in terms of Goldberg and Lesnar. We talked in a previous podcast about what they would do with the booking, and they actually went with the bolder choice, which is to go with the two week in, week out. They're going to be here all the time now, guys that are still actually quite similar in terms of size and stature, but now that we've moved away from your sort of part-time show up, kick-ass, leave, are we going to get more of a match out of that, or are we going to just find ourselves back here again in about 6 months?
No, we've been here before, haven't we? And I think we'll go back around full circle, because they pull the trigger with someone. Rollins, for an example, last year. They put a run together, and then 3 months later, they decide, people aren't tuning in. What should we do? I know. We'll get Brock back. He'll bring some ratings in. And I'll do the exact same thing again. I think that's Goldberg's last run now. He might be back for an individual match with some money in Saudi Arabia, but Brock will be back, and the same thing will happen. Whether he wins the Universal title back or the WWE title, he'll be back, and we'll be back full circle. I predicted in about 8 months, the whole world's gone back to normal, and no one goes to watch wrestling anymore. It's all recorded in a boneyard.
To be fair, that'll be a new height of wrestling if we get solid wall-to-wall boneyard matches. Actually, I do have a nitpick, slight with that, but I want to get onto that in a second. I'm just going to fast forward to the sort of, you mentioned this idea about if we get back to normal, what we're going to get, and all the speculation in the world as to when that's going to be. One of the things that I think is really interesting because of the 2-day format, and they do this around WrestleMania anyway, but you've got post-show on the network. On day one, you had the Drew McIntyre documentary, and on day 2 after the full-on WrestleMania, as it were, you had a sneak preview. I don't know how much they showed of it, of the Undertaker one. If you've got this time now where more people are going to be looking at the shows in a case of outside of a wrestling perspective, I thought they were 2 great examples of not only just showcasing characters, but also the value of the network for one. And it might just purely be because it was the Undertaker that was doing the second night, and you've never really seen that side of him. But I think stuff like that in the shows themselves might make a bit of a difference.
I don't think they can go down that format because you're mixing 2 worlds together there, aren't you? Because they're portraying characters on the show. It'd be like Phil Mitchell coming out of halfway through and they're going into Steve McFadden's real life, where he's also an alcoholic. And
to be honest with you, that sounds like the best episode of EastEnders I've ever seen. But there is an element of post-Attitude Era. They feel like that success is about blurring the lines. And I do think when you've got, really interested to see what happens on Raw tonight, a sort of time period to fill where you can't go to the ring as often. And I do get the feeling that one of the motivating factors of going to 3 hours was this idea that we could throw up a half-an-hour match or a 40-minute match or what.
I think you're wrong now. I think the motivation behind 3 hours was further revenue.
And no, I just mean in terms of like it was done a lot. It could be done a lot more. I'm trying to give them a bit more credit and the benefit of the doubt, so to speak. But fundamentally, what they're going to do to fill those 3 hours is show us old pay-per-views. I'm actually interested to see how much of WrestleMania is on Raw tonight.
I don't know whether they'll show it. They've never gone down that route before, have they? They normally show still pictures. You can still buy the pay-per-view, can't you? I certainly don't think they'll go down that route, but maybe in a couple of weeks when no one's going to pay for it anymore.
I think then, moving this along, we're not going to break down the card match by match. We just want to hit certain points. And one of the things that I just alluded to is this idea that like you've got time to fill, you've got time to kill. The Edge Randy Orton match has, for what I've seen, garnered the most diverse criticism and praise for the length of it, the longest WrestleMania match in history outside of the Iron Man match. And at times it did feel it.
Yeah, I thought the match itself was okay. The length, I thought it went on too long. That's the one match, it wouldn't have mattered if it was in front of 70,000 people, that one, would it? Although they wouldn't have gone backstage into a gym thinking about it, but...
I do think, like you say, if it had been in front of a crowd, I think they would have gotten away with a bit more in terms of the bits in between You know that when they're running up and down corridors and it was just a bit waiting for him to throw him into something. Commentary was a bit weird as well. They were like whispering all the way through it. I think that really detracted from it.
Yeah, it's like watching backyard wrestling, wasn't it?
I think the whole pay-per-view over 2 days was, someone described it to me as like backyard on a massive budget, which sounds really derogatory, but I quite liked it.
I thought it was good. Whether it's all right in the long term or not, I'm not sure, but
they're doing what they can.
Yeah.
But in terms of things that work, things that don't work, I'll be interested to see any sort of conversation that clearly we will not be privy to in regard to the Edge, Randy Orton hanging spot in terms of them going into the gym and the references that have been made not by WWE but by other people in regard to Chris Benoit.
I don't think anyone would have thought that planning it out. It's just, I don't know, having 14 million people on the internet with an opinion that's always right to them.
I get your point to some degree, but what I would say is that this was pre-recorded, not live, so they had numerous chances over the week to have a look back at it. This is the way he killed himself, and there isn't anyone in that roster that doesn't know the story. If it was an outsider, then yeah, but someone involved with this had to know.
Okay, let me ask you a question here. When you watched that match last night, when he did it, did you think Chris Benoit? Because I certainly didn't.
No.
There we go then. That it wouldn't have gone through their head.
It's not my job, though, to go over that footage and make sure that, like, something doesn't happen like that. That no one could even make the connection, because, as you say, there are 14 million people that are going to be potentially looking for... They're not looking for Chris Benoit things, don't get me wrong, but they're looking for...
13,998,000 people are wrong. I'm right, by the way. No, in all seriousness, I didn't think that. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. It's just some Mark sat in his basement in Detroit somewhere.
Oh, I remember that happening 15 years ago.
I've got to be honest with you, even in the moment, it did strike me as a little odd.
Yeah, I don't know why some Mark in Detroit in a basement had a British accent either. But,
well, to be fair, he could have been doing the voiceover for the start, so...
Yeah, good point. Oh, Brummy Johnny Depp, I like him. I should get him on every week.
Would they have used that intro if it was in front of however many thousand people?
In all seriousness, I think that was the entrance, wasn't it? Because Roman Reigns was on the front, which means they planned it.
True. Did you see, and we'll get on to talk about the match in a wider spectrum in a second, the idea that at the stadium there is a boat in the stadium, like on the back end of the stands?
Yeah, I've seen that. It's Tampa. Yeah, I've seen that.
And Kevin Owens has gone on Twitter and said that if the thing would have been there, he would have jumped off that.
It would have looked good, though, wouldn't it? It would have looked amazing.
And I quite liked what we got anyway. We talked about the Edge and Randy Orton match. I appreciated the end and sort of the last quarter of it, but I think if we'd have got just that, I would have knocked it down at all in my head. Whereas Rollins and Owens, the only thing that I thought was missing from that was the crowd.
That's one match that would have benefited from the crowd being there. I thought that was a pretty solid match, actually.
Yeah. Once you get past the initial jump of, oh, there's no one there, it actually played out, for the most part, like the same show.
Yeah, I think they put as much effort into that show as they would have for a main WrestleMania. I thought it looked pretty good. I didn't think anyone phoned it in. They all did a very professional job, I thought. Just to go back to that Kevin Owens match, what did you think of the match restart?
I think it's the kind of thing that plays better with the crowd, which is what I meant, because at the time it looked a little, I don't know, it's not hokey, it's not sort of convoluted, but without a crowd there to goad Seth, it kind of makes him look like a bit of an idiot.
Yeah, no, I think it was a good thing. I think it was the right thing to do.
I'm going to put all these together, actually, because they're kind of the same story told twice, even though the stories they're trying to tell are very different. But Charlotte and Rhea Ripley, and also Shayna and Becky, you're never going to satisfy everyone when the two main stars go over. There's always going to be a proportion of fans that are going to be like, oh, that's burying. And to be honest with you, I fell into that trap a little bit when Charlotte won. And it's difficult because she's very clearly very good. But at times like this, you do wonder like where they go with it when she just keeps winning like this.
I think she's the best female wrestler they've got. I think she's been the best wrestler for a long time. I understand what you're saying, but you can't expect the new guy on the block to win every feud.
It's not every. I just want one, because the point you get to is where Charlotte's only logical challenger, or someone that you could think of in your head as on her level, is Becky Lynch, and I've seen that.
Yeah, I don't think Becky Lynch is on her level.
I just mean in terms of how they're booked.
You can go through time, can't you? You've got Hulk Hogan, Austin, Rock. They were booked to win matches because they were the top star. They've clearly seen her as a top star for, years now, isn't it? So they're going to keep booking her to win. There's nothing on Ripley. She'll get a chance. Yeah. I've got no problem with the result there, to be honest. I have got a problem with the way the match went down. Looking back, Charlotte dominated most of that match.
That's a good storyline to tell if Rhea's going to pull out the ops.
Yeah, exactly. But if she's not gonna, you might as well switch it around, mightn't you? Flair's gonna win anyway. Doesn't matter how she wins.
I suppose there's an argument to say that all you're doing is getting to the inevitable Rhea getting the title win back, hopefully in front of the crowd.
I thought they were going to do that with McIntyre as well, to be honest. But
before we move on to the Becky Lynch match, I just wanted to ask you quickly. I saw this take online, and I'm very interested to see what you think of it. I'm quite high on this, actually. In the rankings of a Shawn Michaels Mr. WrestleMania, like always performs at WrestleMania, Charlotte's got to be up there.
She won every match.
No, not in terms of like winning, but in terms of performance. Like, with Shawn Michaels, you'd always get a good match. Is Charlotte kind of the female version of this?
I don't think it's just WrestleMania, is it? I think she's always got a good match on, and
that's true. Yeah.
I suppose you could say that. Yeah, you could say. I think she's the best female wrestler they've had in
ever.
Ever? Yeah, I think she is. Ever.
It might be recency bias talking, and there is going to be someone online that's going to go, no, Fabulous Moolah, and I fully respect that, and I get where that comes from, but just from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's from what I've seen. I mean, the ones in the 90s, they were okay, weren't they? They were just okay.
Maybe this is sort of my/our issue. For the male wrestlers, because it's always been the Fed as it is, there's no quote-unquote bar for them to hit, whereas when we grew up through the Attitude Era and onwards, the bar for women's wrestling was so low that Lita and Trish came and shattered that completely. And then the women now have gone another evolution step so far ahead of that. But still, when you watch these women wrestle, you still hear the comments, she's a good wrestler for a woman.
No, I see what you're saying. Who won the women's battle royal at WrestleMania 25? A man. It was seen as a bit of a joke, really, wasn't it?
If you want to do that, go to, I think this is 2 and a bit years ago. I'm going to get the time slightly wrong. Didn't a man win the first ever women's Money in the Bank?
Yeah. Ellsworth grabbed the briefcase, didn't he?
A man wins a Royal Rumble. A man takes the briefcase down. So a woman's not going to be able to do it on her own.
I could sort of understand why they did it.
From a character /heat perspective.
From a character perspective, because he was helping her win matches, wasn't he? It wasn't just that ladder match. He was helping her win individual matches as well.
I get it, but not the first ever one.
Yeah, okay. That's a fair point, actually. That's a fair point. I'll give you that one. Speaking
of finishes that you potentially have a disagreement with, we had a conversation over at the first night of WrestleMania in terms of Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler in terms of that finish. I have a very specific storyline issue with it. You have a application issue with it.
The match itself, I've got no problem with. I thought it was all right. It's a bit of back and forth on it. Most of the match was spent trying to lock each other's finisher in. The problem I've got, Becky Lynch, I've seen that spot before. Was it Bret Hart and Piper? I think it was WrestleMania 8 or 9. I think it was 9. They used the same finish in the roll-up, but I've got no problem with the actual move, right? Go for the move, that's fine. But don't make it look sloppy when it's pre-recorded. The idea is all the pressure's on her shoulders and her body, so she can't kick out. So she rolls 90% of her body to the side. Baszler doesn't even try and kick out with the legs. She just lies there flat. So come on, man. Put a better finish together than that.
It's interesting. I actually think we might actually be arguing the same point here, because my issue with it is I thought the story they were trying to tell was that she's refusing to let go of this hold because she thinks she can choke her out in the time to get counted. That's how convinced she is of this hold. My problem with that is that she didn't have it in long enough before the roll-up, because there's no way you would choke someone. I know, and unfortunately, what I'm about to say is actual bullshit. There's no way you're going to choke someone out that quickly, which is actually what happens when you choke people out. But in wrestling, if she slaps it on, then suddenly her commitment to it doesn't seem as stupid afterwards.
No, fair point. If we're going off the wrestling subject here, I think they've made her look a bit of a prat, actually. She's gone from unstoppable monster in NXT. How long was she champion and went undefeated? It was quite a while, wasn't it? So they've had her stopped after... Oh, she won the Elimination Chamber. Her first major one-on-one feud, she's lost. To someone that's... She doesn't need the title anymore, Lynch, does she? She's been champion for 12 months.
I was actually surprised when we were talking during the show, and I raised the question, is that the title she won last year? And
yeah.
It was like, oh, wow. Like, what's happened in that time?
Yeah, I think the story, she's run through the entire roster, and now she's run through Baszler.
This is the point I was talking to you earlier in terms of, if you do this, you've run through everyone, then you get this challenger that's supposed to like, oh, you've run through everyone, but not this person. Then you run through that person as well. Who are you left with? Her and Charlotte?
Pretty much, isn't it? I'd like to see where they're going on Raw after this, unless she retires as champion.
yeah, I've had enough of that. Much like the actual shows themselves, you've waited long enough. We've got two matches to sort of go over our feelings on, and we have very good feelings about both. First and foremost, the Boneyard match, we set it up in a previous podcast as just let it be everything Vampiro at Bash at the Beach 2000 was but wasn't, and we kind of got that in a brilliant way.
We did. Had everything, didn't it? It was like watching a Hollywood blockbuster.
Can I just point out, like, this has been said elsewhere, but I really want to underline this point. The Undertaker, in chatting shit to AJ Styles as he's beating him up, is the most sense that character has ever made to me.
I'll be honest, I was too busy laughing and thinking this is the best thing I've ever watched at that point to listen, but it's his American Badass gimmick, isn't it? If you watch that back, that gimmick was so good.
The original Undertaker gimmick, and I know it evolved over time, but it actually deprived us of Mark Calloway, if you want to call it that. He's actually got charisma. He can actually talk. But Undertaker promos aren't very good because you can only talk in, like, graveyard-related metaphors, whereas when he's American Badass, he can chat shit. But yeah, no, the whole thing of when Taker was dragging AJ to the grave and AJ was like, don't bury me. Like, that sounded legit. No one gives AJ Styles credit either for, like, the way he could talk, but I believed that he thought he was about to die.
Ah, seen his hand coming out the floor. That means he must be starved of oxygen for at least 10 minutes.
By the way, I don't know if this was done on purpose, and I'm going to assume it is. You know, that's like a callback to the first ever Buried Live match.
Yeah, his hand comes out the floor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's going to come back with short hair and like a American no-ass or something.
AJ Niles.
That's it, exactly, yeah.
But,
oh, dear.
I've only got one possible issue with this match.
No, I'm dismissing it already. There were no issues with that match.
It's a small thing, but you know when the ball came down and the Druids came out, which is effectively the 24/7 jobbers get their WrestleMania payday.
Do you know what that reminded me of? Reminded me of the Turtles with Bebop and Rocksteady, with Gallows and Anderson, and then all the, what are they called? The purple people?
Purple people.
The putty. No, not the putty. That was a different program. They were wearing purple. What was
The foot soldiers.
Yeah. And then the door opened, and there were a million foot soldiers behind the shed. It was great.
Yeah. But then the way I would have done that, and it's such a small term, I don't know how this works, but the fact of the matter is you don't know how this works anyway, which is that surely the Druids would be on Undertaker's side. So I'd have liked a moment where, like, the Druids surround AJ, Gallows, and Anderson, and then they just turn on the Undertaker.
Money can turn anyone. That's all I need to say. Do you know what I liked the this is just a small little detail. When they were turning up and their little name come to the side, and it was like watching a rock star. So it was like watching a rock star game. Tiny detail, but I thought it looked very professional.
I loved it at the time, and I loved this moment when I watched it back, and I've seen it back a few times.
You spent the past 12 hours watching it on a loop, haven't you?
Oh, basically, yeah. When AJ Styles comes out of that casket and the laugh is just so perfect.
Yeah, it is quite good. It's like watching a child, isn't it? It's great.
But the thing about it is that as we're talking about it, like, as the match was going on, it was a case of, like, I need just a little bit more bullshit. And then they went on the roof with the magic tricks and the flames, throwing him off to the abyss of nowhere, and then tombstoning the other one. I'm not sure if it's Gallows or Anderson, which way around it was, but it was pure carnage. And then the funny thing is that when you know it's going to be filmed like Hollywood style, you're sort of looking for the terrible cuts. Do you know, there was a moment actually in the triple threat ladder match where they didn't show the guy land.
No, he would have been literally dead. That's why.
Yeah.
Didn't he? I'm not sure how high a ring is. Let's say 15 foot. The ladder on top was probably another 12. I don't think anyone could physically drop 30 foot to the floor on a concrete floor and be okay. He was back in the ring 30 seconds later.
Like Triple H survived a 30-foot drop in a car, and you come on Raw the next day with just a couple of scratches. This is the type of dedication we need.
I think you're being generous there. I don't think there was a single scratch.
So I'm looking for these kind of cuts in the Undertaker AJ Styles thing, and I actually think they did it to a point where, aside from the obvious grave and AJ being there,
yeah,
I didn't really notice anything that was like would catch you out, would make you go, oh, that's terrible. Like, even when he chokeslams him off the roof, it still looked fairly good.
Did we see him land? I can't remember if we saw him land or not.
There's no cutaway.
Obviously, they made it safe, did they? Otherwise, AJ Styles would literally be dead right now. But it looked good, though, didn't it?
The whole thing, as I say, and for the Undertaker's character, it fits perfectly. And it does make you wonder that, and we talked about at the start of the podcast, this idea of outside style matches and it's not quite right to just lean into the Matt Hardy thing and go, oh, he invented it, because it was done in WCW before to terrible effect.
If you want to say that, it was done in WWE when Goldust fought Roddy Piper in LA Street. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what WrestleMania that was, but they pre-recorded that the week before. It's not brand new to do that.
And let's be honest as well. If you're talking in terms of modern context, Lucha Underground was basically all that.
Yeah, it was actually. I did see that. I'm not sure why I couldn't get into that.
I think it was what you alluded to earlier, in the sense that if you do it all the time, it kind of loses its impact.
Yeah, that's it. That's it, exactly. Can I say, they're not always perfectly executed. I mean, Randy Orton fought Bray Wyatt in the House of Horrors match, and I thought that was awful.
Yeah.
So, A, don't do it all the time. B, get it right, and they did last night.
Can I offer a slight conspiracy to that Bray Wyatt? And I want to throw in New Day and Wyatt Family as well.
Okay.
The Hardys, specifically Matt, did it in Impact, TNA, whatever you want to call it. I get the feeling this was both them wanting to try it, but also Vince maybe not getting it, which we've already talked about, and kind of not doing it properly, not committing to it, so that when it doesn't come off, he can then turn around and go, yeah, it's not going to work, is it?
No, I agree. I said before, he didn't get it. They were heading down that route again in TNA, weren't they? They were doing it all the time, and it didn't. No, it's too much.
So we had night one, climaxing literally with that gloriousness that was the Boneyard match. And there was a good 24 hours to ruminate as to what John Cena and Bray Wyatt would do. Did you, in any way, shape or form, have in your head anything close to what we got?
I sort of did, but only because I watched the fantasy booking video with Adam Blampede on Wrestle Talk. His run-through was a run-through time, and it was exactly the way it played out. So he comes out as the prototype, and then he comes out as the Doctor of Thugonomics. When he said it, I thought, that sounds a really cool idea, that does. And then they sort of did it, and I was like, bloody hell.
The thing is that, and I've heard some criticism for this, and I do actually... No, I have, and I can follow the logic of the criticism, which is that for all the bullshit that we saw in the Undertaker AJ Styles Boneyard match, you can somehow wrap your mind around everything that happened in terms of the Undertaker just got out the grave quickly and appeared behind him. And then you could set, if you knew where the Boneyard was, you could set some pyro up beforehand. Like, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Is it like the most straightforward and easy thing to do? Probably not, but it's doable. Whereas there's nothing in this quote-unquote match that's doable.
If anyone took that seriously in any way, then I'd say they need to see a shrink.
Yes, yeah. I watched it and I didn't take it seriously, and I still think I need to seek help after that one, because quite possibly the closest you can get to having an acid trip without taking any acid.
Pretty much. I saw a theory earlier. You know, Cena said on Friday, I'm going to make sure that I remove the most overhyped superstar. What if he was referring to himself?
I thought that as they did it, in the moment where the quote came back as he was giving him the finishing move.
Because he went through, and looking back, it was like John Cena was Hogan, wasn't it? The prototype thing, no, that was just his introduction. After that, Saturday Night Main Event, he was Hogan. The NWO thing, he was Hogan. And it's like he was comparing Cena's career as the Hulk Hogan of his generation.
Yeah.
And the overhype thing comes along with that.
Well, I think there's a couple of things in there, in that when Bray was talking to him to start with, it did feel a little bit like, you know when he was calling him a bullet?
I'm surprised I went with that word, actually.
Well, it played into, and they do this all the time now, like what people perceive John Cena's character to be behind closed doors, as it were. That did feel a little shootish to me. And when they were doing the Saturday Night's Main Event segment, and when he was going on about egomania, it definitely felt like that was a play into the Hogan of his era, as you suggested.
Yeah, definitely.
There are a couple of other things that I need to mention. Cannot leave this aside without talking about Puppet Vince McMahon on commentary.
That's such good shit.
Yeah.
That was genius putting that in
there. Mercy the Buzzard as Macho Man as well. And then on top of that, you've got what comes out of that, which is a couple of things. I'll do the first thing, which I don't think they will do first, which is there is a door here for where Cena comes back as a proper heel now, because this whole idea of Bray Wyatt reversing the timeline, if you want to go too literal into it, and beating John Cena. So now John Cena has the aggression and that was the whole thing. I thought
what if
bring out this evil side of him.
Yeah, what if he disappeared at the end, didn't he? What if he comes back as the prototype again, starts again?
That'd be incredible.
There was a rumor flying around, wasn't there? They were going to bring back the NWO. Roman Reigns was going to lead it. What if Cena come back as the senior figure in the picture and led a new group of young, up-and-coming guys? What do you think of that?
In terms of getting a group of guys over, it's a way to go. The only problem you've got is that it could be a bit of a millstone around their neck. This isn't the perfect example, but it's the best example I could think of. You know when Paul Heyman was going around recruiting Paul Heyman guys, and it didn't quite fit because you've got, in theory, someone that it's a guaranteed win. Absolutely no chance this can fail when it's like Cesaro and then Ryback, Curtis Axel. Jesus Christ, that was a fucking swing and a miss. But in theory, these high-profile, it can't possibly fail gimmick, it can be something that's like doesn't quite connect. And if you've got guys, I mean, sometimes it works perfectly. You look back now at Evolution when they chose Batista over Jindrak and Randy Orton as well, and we all knew Randy Orton had it, but I don't think anyone realised he had it to quite that degree. It's very hard to put that together. So if they got the right guys, then yeah, fair play. But otherwise, it might be a little precarious.
Yeah, they did with the Shield, didn't they? That was the last real big one. 2 of the 3 guys had it already. Reigns had the look, and he needed coach. Same as Batista. As we see, he had the look. He needed the other things to fall in line. They needed promo skills and whatnot.
Working house shows again and again and again with not Ambrose and Rollins, but the people they were feuding with.
Yeah, exactly. I think Cena coming back and could work. We'll see that.
The thing is that is, if I wouldn't think it's his last match ever, but in terms of closing what is almost certainly the penultimate chapter in his wrestling career, if not the ultimate, then, I'd be fine with that because it's a way of going out. And also, one of the things that going into this, you wondered, specifically with it being WWE, this idea of, it's John Cena, and more importantly, it's Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt never wins the big one. Bray Wyatt, even in this match, it's talked about how he just loses when it matters. And there's no danger, having watched that match yesterday, that Bray Wyatt losing the title hurt him in any way, shape or form now.
No, it didn't. No, looking back, it didn't. I still don't think that was the right decision. Don't get me wrong.
It does show you can rehabilitate someone very quickly if you do it properly.
Oh, yeah. I think we said last time, didn't we? I think the problem is that he shouldn't have had the belt on him in the first place. Correct. He didn't need that title. The gimmick was the thing. He didn't need the belt. Although they got to sell a brand new belt on the WWE shop for £300, so bonus to them.
Yeah, but what now comes of that is, and hopefully they'll do better with it this time round and not just go for that WWE shop zone dollar as we mentioned. And if he could just sort of prowl the outskirts, that sounds dodgy, but still. And unfortunately, there aren't that many of them that I can think of off the top of my head in the Federation right now currently. But there are a lot of guys I would like to see go through the Firehouse Funhouse. And the first one that springs to mind isn't the one you'd expect.
Go on.
I'd really love to see them do that with Jericho.
Jericho? Oh, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? It has several gimmicks, hasn't it? It's about a 4-hour show, actually. Pay-per-view special. Oh, there are a few guys, aren't there? Orton. Couldn't do Goldberg now because he's been exactly the same his entire career.
That'd be good. You do it, just the same segment over and over again.
Yeah. I know he's a bit old now. That would work well with Mick Foley.
That'd
be amazing, wouldn't it? I know we're not talking current stars here, but that'd be amazing with Foley.
You can do it with Foley because he doesn't really have to take a bump until the end.
That's true, actually. You do it with The Undertaker. Tell you what, let's take control of the booking here.
You said at the start we don't want to do it too much, but now every show has a boneyard match and every other show has 4-5 Funhouse.
Oh, bollocks, cancel SmackDown. 2 hours at the Funhouse.
It's not the WWE anymore, it's the Firehouse Federation.
I'm all in. I'm buying the shares right now.
And on that note, this has been Beyond the Beermat WrestleMania 36 special. And by the time this comes out, the really intriguing part of, and the final chapter of WrestleMania 36, the Raw afterwards, will have aired. I'm really hopeful that we don't get a Roman Reigns challenging Braun Strowman to open the show.
Yeah.
That's my one worry.
It won't be on Raw, will it? They might do it on SmackDown. Yeah, we shall see. I'll cry if that happens. I won't cry, I'll just go and get a beer.
With that in mind, we move forward into this new, still crowdless era, and Beyond the Beermat will be with you to guide you along and have a few beers, chat shit, and completely dominate the wrestling scene in our own unique style. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you again very, very soon.